What if Robb Stark read Lyanna's letter before the twins, and rode north to crown Jon Snow before the wedding drum? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The sun beats down on the banners of the northern host as they crest the hill, overlooking the Green Fork. Below them, the twins rise from the swift-flowing waters like twin daggers thrust up from the riverbed. One castle on each bank, connected by the stone bridge that has made House Frey wealthy for 3 centuries. Robb Stark sits atop his destrier, watching the morning light catch on the towers where his uncle Edmure will wed a Frey daughter this very day. The young wolf has grown grim in recent months. At 16, the auburn-haired king bears the weight of crown and war on his shoulders. His direwolf Grey Wind pads restlessly at his horse's side, yellow eyes fixed on the stronghold ahead. The army behind him numbers fewer than when he first marched south. Too many good men lie buried in foreign soil. Too many banners have been lost to Lannister steel and treachery. The wedding will repair what was broken, Catelyn Stark says, riding up beside her eldest son. At 35, she remains a handsome woman, though grief has carved lines around her blue Tully eyes. Lord Walder will forgive the slight once Edmure speaks his vows. Robb nods but says nothing. The slight she speaks of weighs heavily on his mind. He had sworn to marry one of old Walder Frey's daughters in exchange for crossing this very bridge. Instead, he took Jane Westerling to wife after the fall of the crag. Honour demanded it after he had bedded her, but honour has cost him dearly. The Freys withdrew their support, taking 4,000 men with them when his cause needed every sword. "Mother," Robb begins, but his words are cut short by the sound of wings overhead. A raven circles the host 3 times before settling on the standard-bearer's lance. The bird clutches a message tube in its talons, the dark metal catching the light. Ravens have brought nothing but ill news of late. Word of Bran and Rickon's deaths, reports of Winterfell's burning. Robb's jaw tightens as the master retrieves the message and hurries forward. "Your Grace," the old man says, offering the rolled parchment. "From Winterfell's archives. The seal." He pauses, studying the worn wax. "It bears your grandfather's mark, Lord Rickard's." Robb frowns as he takes the message. His grandfather died at King's Landing 16 years ago, burned alive by the Mad King. Why would a raven carry his seal now? The wax crumbles as he breaks it, revealing parchment yellowed with age. The writing inside is a woman's hand, flowing and urgent. "My dearest brother, if you read this, then the worst has come to pass, and I am dead. I pray you will forgive what I have done, but I could not let Robert's rage consume an innocent child. The son I bore is not what men believe. He is not the spawn of rape or madness, but of love freely given. Rhaegar and I were wed in secret before the eyes of the 7. The High Septon's records will prove it, though they lie hidden now. Our marriage was true, our love real, our son legitimate. When the time comes that truth can be spoken without bringing death, know that the boy you raised as bastard is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. His name is Aegon, 3rd of his name. I wanted to name him after father, but Rhaegar said the dragon must have a dragon's name. Promise me, Ned, that you will keep him safe until the realm is ready for a Targaryen king once more. Your loving sister, Lyanna." The parchment trembles in Robb's hands. He reads the words again, then once more, but their meaning doesn't change. Jon Snow is no bastard. Jon Snow is Aegon Targaryen, rightful king of the 7 kingdoms. The truth hits him like a mace, blow to the chest, stealing his breath and setting his mind reeling. "Robb?" Catelyn's voice seems to come from very far away. "What is it? You've gone white as fresh snow." He hands her the letter without speaking, watching her blue eyes grow wide as she reads. Her lips move silently, forming the impossible words. When she finishes, she looks up at him with shock and something else. Relief, perhaps, or vindication. "John," she whispers. "All these years, I thought. I believed Ned had betrayed me. But he was protecting the boy. Protecting us all from Robert's wrath." "A Targaryen," Robb says, the word feeling strange on his tongue. "My brother, my cousin, is the rightful king." He stares at the twins below, where his uncle prepares to wed for political alliance, where old Walder Frey waits to extract his price for past slights. The wedding that was meant to secure his southern flank and restore his strength now seems small and distant. "What will you do?" Catelyn asks, though something in her voice suggests she already knows. Grey wind lifts his great head and howls, a sound that echoes across the hills and sends shivers through the ranks. Other wolves take up the cry, their voices joining in a chorus that speaks of wild places and older loyalties than gold or grain or marriage pacts. Robb Stark, king in the north, looks once more at the twins. Then he wheels his horse around and calls for his captains. The wedding can wait. The realm has waited 16 years for its rightful king. It will wait no longer. "We ride north," he declares, his voice carrying across the host. "We ride for the wall." The royal pavilion stands in silence, the only sound the rustle of banners in the evening wind. Robb Stark paces before the map table, Lyanna's letter clutched in his hand like a talisman. The parchment has been read a dozen times now, but the words remain as impossible as when he first saw them. Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, is Aegon Targaryen, rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Catelyn sits on a camp stool, her hands folded in her lap. Her blue eyes follow her son's restless movement, seeing the war that rages within him. She has watched Robb grow from boy to man to king in the span of 2 years, but she has never seen him struggle with a choice like this. "Tell me about her," Robb says suddenly, stopping before his mother. "Tell me about Lyanna. Father never spoke of her. Not truly." Catelyn draws a slow breath. The sister she never met has haunted her marriage for 16 years, a ghost of beauty and wildness that Ned carried in his heart. "She was different from your father," she begins. "Where Ned was steady as stone, Lyanna was quick as summer lightning. Brandon said she had the wolf's blood running hot in her veins. She could ride like a centaur and fight like a warrior. At Harrenhal, she jousted as the Knight of the Laughing Tree, and none knew it was a slip of a girl beneath that helm." Robb's eyes brighten with something like pride. "She saved Howland Reed from those squires." "Aye. She saw injustice, and could not abide it, just as you cannot." Catelyn studies her son's face, seeing echoes of the aunt he never knew. They say Robert loved her, but I wonder if he truly knew her. She was no prize to be won or delicate flower to be protected. She chose her own path, even unto death. "The Tower of Joy," Robb murmurs, "where she died giving birth to Jon." He looks down at the letter again, at the flowing script that speaks of love and legitimacy. She gave her life to protect him, to ensure the truth survived, even if hidden. "And your father honored that sacrifice," Catelyn says quietly. "He let the realm believe him unfaithful, rather than reveal a secret that would have meant Jon's death. Robert would have killed every Targaryen child he could find, legitimate or not." Robb resumes his pacing, boots scuffing against the thick carpet. Outside, the camp settles into evening routine. Cook fires flicker to life, and men gather around them, sharing stories and wine. They know nothing of the revelation that burns in their king's hands. They know only that tomorrow brings another wedding, another alliance, another step in the long dance of war and politics. The Night's Watch, Robb says abruptly. Jon swore vows, sacred vows that bind him until death. Or royal pardon, Catelyn replies. You are a king, Robb. Kings have the power to release men from such bonds when necessity demands it. But would he accept it? Jon has always taken his honor more seriously than most. He went to the wall to serve something greater than himself. Would he abandon that duty for a crown he never sought? Catelyn considers this. Jon Snow has been a stranger to her for most of his life, the cuckoo in her nest, the living reminder of her husband's supposed betrayal. Yet she has watched him grow from boy to man, seen his loyalty to family and duty. He is Ned's son in all the ways that matter, she says finally. Raised with Stark values, trained to do what is right rather than what is easy. But he is also Lyanna's son, and she had the courage to defy kings and kingdoms for love. The choice will be his to make. Robb stops pacing and turns to face her. In the lamplight, his auburn hair catches fire, making him look older than his 16 years. The crown of bronze and iron sits heavily on his brow, but it is the weight in his grey eyes that marks him as king. Lord Walder expects us at dawn, he says. Edmure's wedding cannot proceed without the bride's family present to give her away. If we do not appear, if we turn north without explanation, the Freys will know they are abandoned, Catelyn finishes. They will send word to the Lannisters immediately. Any hope of reconciliation dies. Aye. Robb runs his hands through his hair, disturbing the simple circlet he wears. But tell me, Mother, what is the greater betrayal? To break faith with the Freys, or to leave the rightful king forgotten at the wall, while I wear a crown that belongs to another? The question hangs in the air between them. Catelyn sees the choice her son faces with perfect clarity now. Honor demands he support Jon's claim. Politics demands he secure the Frey alliance. There is no path that leads to both. When I married Jane, Robb continues, his voice quiet but firm, I chose honor over advantage. I chose to protect an innocent girl rather than uphold a marriage pact. It cost us the Freys then, but it was the right choice. How can I do less for my own brother? Jon is not truly your brother, Catelyn says, though the words taste strange. If this letter speaks truth, he is your cousin. Raised as my brother, loved as my brother, defended as my brother. Robb's voice grows stronger with each word. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. Jon is family, whatever his true parentage may be. He moves to the map table and spreads his hands across the painted kingdoms. His eyes trace the roads that lead north to the wall, where Jon serves with quill and sword, where Jon has no idea that his entire world is about to change. The realm needs a king it can believe in, Robb says. A king with the right name, the right bloodline, the right claim. I am king in the north, but Jon could be king of all 7 kingdoms. The dragons are gone, but the blood of the dragon remains. And you would give up your crown for this? Catelyn asks. Kneel before a bastard who may not even want to rule? I would kneel before my brother who is rightful king, Robb corrects, as I would hope he would kneel before me if our positions were reversed. This is not about giving up power, Mother. This is about serving something greater than ourselves. He straightens, decision crystallizing in his grey eyes, like ice forming on still water. The boy who rode south to avenge his father has become a man who will sacrifice everything for his family. The king in the north has chosen his path. Send word to the captains, he commands. "We break camp before first light. Tell them the king rides north on urgent business. Do not speak of the letter or its contents to anyone. Not yet." Catelyn rises, pride and worry warring in her chest. "And Lord Walder? What shall I tell him when his ravens come demanding answers?" Robb Stark, king in the north, looks toward the twins one last time. The towers gleam pale in the moonlight, beautiful and treacherous as everything else in the Game of Thrones. "Tell him the wolves remember," he says simply. "Tell him the pack survives." Dawn breaks cold and grey over the northern host as they strike camp in the shadow of the twins. The great stronghold looms across the green fork, its twin towers reflecting the pale morning light like broken mirrors. From this distance, the castle seems peaceful, almost welcoming. None would guess that within those walls, old Walder Frey waits with growing impatience for a king who will never come. Robb Stark sits his destrier at the head of his army, watching his men pack the royal pavilion and load the supply wagons. 3,000 Northmen move with the quiet efficiency of soldiers who have learned to break camp quickly and march hard. These are not the green boys who followed him south 2 years ago. These are veterans, hardened by battle and loss, loyal to their young king despite the defeats that have whittled their numbers. "The men are ready, Your Grace," reports Sir Wendell Manderley, riding up with steam puffing from his horse's nostrils. The knight's round face is flushed with cold and confusion. "Though I confess I do not understand the urgency. Lord Walder expects us for the wedding feast." "Lord Walder will have to celebrate without us," Robb says, his voice carrying clearly in the crisp air. He turns his horse away from the twins, away from the strategic crossing that has dominated the Riverlands for centuries. "We ride north." A murmur runs through the ranks like wind through wheat. North means home, but it also means abandoning the campaign that has cost them so much blood and treasure. North means winter roads and dwindling supplies. North means questions that their king seems unwilling to answer. Catelyn draws her mare alongside her son, her breath misting in the cold air. She wears the blue and silver of House Tully, but her cloak is the grey wool of the north. Like her son, she has been changed by this war, hardened by loss and betrayal. The soft woman who once worried about propriety and protocol has learned to make hard choices. "They deserve to know why," she says quietly, nodding toward the confused faces of the soldiers. "These men have followed you faithfully. They have the right to understand what drives this sudden march." "They will understand when the time comes," Robb replies. He raises his voice, addressing the host. "We ride for Castle Black and the Wall. There is urgent business there that requires the king's personal attention. Any man who questions this order may speak now or hold his peace." The army falls silent. These Northmen understand the value of the wall, the crucial role it plays in protecting the realm from whatever horrors lurk beyond. If their king says there is urgent business there, they will follow. They have followed him through fire and blood and defeat. They will follow him through winter if he asks it. But Catelyn sees the worry in their faces, the uncertainty that comes from another sudden change of plans. How many times have they been promised victory, only to watch it slip away? How many times have they been told this march or that battle would end the war, only to find themselves still far from home as autumn fades toward winter? The column begins to move, 3,000 men and horses turning their backs on the twins. They ride past the very spot where they had planned to cross, where Robb had first bent the knee to his mother's uncle and sworn alliance with House Frey. Now the bridge stands empty, save for its guards, who watch in bewilderment as the northern army wheels away from their walls. "What will you tell them?" Catelyn asks as they settle into the rhythm of the march. "When Lord Walder's ravens start flying, when word reaches every corner of the realm that the king in the north abandoned his uncle's wedding without explanation." "The truth," Robb says simply. "Eventually. But not yet. Not until I know Jon will accept what I offer him." The mention of Jon's name hangs in the air between them. For 16 years, that name has been a source of tension in House Stark. Catelyn has never been able to forget that Jon Snow exists, never been able to fully accept the bastard her husband brought home from war. Now she must reconcile herself to the possibility that the boy she scorned may be the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. "He may refuse," she says. "Jon has always been dedicated to his duties. He took his vows seriously." "Then I will return south and face whatever consequences await," Robb replies. "But I will not live with the knowledge that the rightful king serves as a sworn brother while I wear a crown that belongs to him." They ride through farmland and forests, past villages where common folk pause in their morning tasks to watch the royal banners pass. The stark direwolf flies beside the crown of the king in the north, grey on white field that speaks of ancient loyalties and older magic. Some villagers cheer, calling out blessings on their young king. Others watch in worried silence, knowing that armies rarely bring good news. As the day wears on, the temperature drops noticeably. The sun shines pale and distant, offering little warmth despite the clear sky. Clouds gather on the northern horizon, like gathering wolves, promising snow before the week is out. The horses' breath steams in the cold air, and the men pull their cloaks tighter around their shoulders. "Winter is coming," Catelyn observes, watching the clouds build. "Moving an army in winter is dangerous, Robb. Supply lines grow unreliable, men fall sick, horses die of cold. And once the snows begin in earnest, the roads will become nearly impassable," Robb finishes. "I know, Mother, but we are Northmen. We understand winter better than any southern army, and the wall has stood for 8,000 years through winters beyond counting. If any place in the realm can shelter an army through the dark months, it is Castle Black." At midday, they call a halt to rest the horses and share a cold meal. Robb uses the time to dictate letters to the Maester, messages that will fly ahead on ravens' wings to announce their coming. He chooses his words carefully, revealing nothing of Jon's true parentage, but making it clear that urgent business draws the king in the north to the wall. "To Lord Commander Mormont," he dictates, "and to my brother Jon Snow, steward of Castle Black. I ride north with all haste on a matter of great import to the realm. I would speak with you both in person regarding news that has recently come to light. The matter touches on questions of legitimacy and justice that require careful consideration. I ask that you prepare for the arrival of myself and my host within the fortnight." The letter is sealed with his personal sigil and given to the swiftest raven in the Master's care. Robb watches the black bird disappear into the grey sky, carrying words that will change everything for the bastard brother he has loved since childhood. "No word of Lyanna's letter?" Catelyn asks. "Not yet. Jon deserves to hear the truth from family, not from a raven's message. And if word of his parentage spreads too quickly, it could reach unfriendly ears before he is prepared to defend himself." The afternoon brings them deeper into the northern countryside, where the woods grow thicker and the villages smaller. This is the borderland between the Riverlands and the North proper, where Stark influence has traditionally been strong, but never absolute. Here, Loyalty is earned through protection and justice rather than demanded through ancient oaths. As evening approaches, they make camp beside a swift-flowing stream. The men work efficiently to establish their lines, dig latrines, and set watches. Cook fires bloom like flowers in the gathering darkness, though the men keep them small and well-shielded. Old habits die hard, and they have learned to be cautious even in supposedly friendly territory. Robb stands apart from the camp, looking north toward lands he has not seen in 2 years. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies Winterfell, his ancestral seat, reduced to blackened stone and bitter memories. Beyond that, the wall rises like a knife edge against the sky, where Jon Snow serves with quill and sword, unaware that his entire world is about to change. It will take us 12 days, perhaps more if the weather turns, Catelyn says, joining him by the stream. 12 days for doubt to grow, for questions to multiply. Are you certain this is the right course? Robb picks up a smooth stone from the stream bed and sends it skipping across the dark water. 1, 2, 3 bounces before it disappears beneath the surface. When I was a boy, he says, Jon was always the one who could make his stones skip the farthest. He had the patience to find just the right stone, the perfect angle. I was always in too much hurry, too eager to throw and see what happened. Father said it was the difference between us. Jon thought before he acted, while I acted and thought later. And now? Now I am thinking, Robb says simply. For the first time since this war began, I am thinking beyond the next battle, the next alliance, the next desperate gamble. I am thinking about what comes after, about what kind of realm we want to build when the fighting finally ends. The stream gurgles softly beside them, carrying the last light of day toward the distant sea. In 12 days, they will reach the wall. In 12 days, Robb Stark will kneel before his bastard brother and offer him a crown. The realm will never be the same. Come, he says, turning back toward the camp. We have a long road ahead, and winter is coming. The raven arrives at Castle Black 3 days into the march, its black wings cutting through the grey autumn sky like a knife through wool. Jon Snow stands atop the wall when he sees it approaching, a dark speck against the gathering clouds that promise snow before the week is out. At 600 feet above the forest floor, the wind cuts like a blade, whipping his black cloak around his lean frame and stinging his grey eyes to tears. He knows before the bird lands that it carries news from the south. Ravens from Robb have been rare these past months, each one bringing word of another battle, another loss, another retreat. Jon has learned to dread the sight of them, these harbingers of grief that remind him how far he is from the family he left behind. The raven circles Castle Black twice before settling on the Lord Commander's tower, where the Maester waits to relieve it of its burden. Jon climbs down from the wall using the winch cage, his heart heavy with anticipation. At 16, he has grown tall and lean, with the dark hair and long face of the Starks. The black wool of the Night's Watch suits him, making him seem older than his years, though the weight in his grey eyes speaks of burdens no young man should bear. "Jon," calls Sam Tarly from across the yard, his round face flushed with cold and exertion. "The Maester wants to see you in his chambers." He seemed troubled. Jon's stomach tightens. Troubled news has become the only kind that reaches the wall. He makes his way through the castle's maze of corridors, past the armory where recruits practice their sword work, and the kitchens where the evening meal simmers over open fires. Castle Black bustles with the quiet energy of men preparing for winter. But there is an underlying tension that speaks of harder times ahead. Maester Aemon's chambers are warm and dim. lit by candles that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. The old man sits behind his desk, his milky eyes fixed on something only he can see. At 101 years old, he is ancient beyond measure, his skin like parchment, and his hair white as fresh snow. Yet his mind remains sharp as Valyrian steel, and Jon has come to value his counsel above all others. "Sit, Jon," the Maester says, without looking up from the letter in his hands. His voice is thin as autumn wind, but still carries the authority of a man who once could have been king. "We have received word from your brother." "From Robb." Jon settles into the chair across from the desk, his hands gripping the armrests. "Is he well? Has something happened to him?" "He lives and marches north with all haste," Aemon replies. "But the news he carries." The old man pauses, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "Tell me, Jon, what do you know of your birth?" The question strikes Jon like a physical blow. In 16 years, no one has asked him that directly, though the circumstances of his birth have shadowed every day of his life. He is bastard-born, the stain on Lord Eddard Stark's otherwise spotless honor, proof that even the most honorable men can fall to temptation. "I know what everyone knows," Jon says carefully. "I am Lord Stark's bastard son, born during Robert's rebellion, to a woman whose name he would never speak." "And you have never questioned this? Never wondered why a man famous for his honor would father a bastard and bring him home to raise alongside his true-born children?" Jon has wondered, of course. Every bastard wonders about the circumstances of their birth, about the love or lust or simple accident that brought them into the world. But Ned Stark's silence on the matter had been absolute, and Jon had learned not to ask questions that would never receive answers. "What are you suggesting?" Jon asks, though his heart already knows that everything he believes about himself is about to change. Maester Aemon holds up the letter, his blind eyes somehow finding Jon's face across the desk. "Your brother writes that new information has come to light regarding your parentage, information that changes everything. He rides north to speak with you personally about matters of legitimacy and justice." "I don't understand." "Don't you?" The old man's voice is gentle but probing. "You have always been different, Jon Snow. Different from your siblings in ways that go beyond the accident of birth. You carry yourself like a king's son, not a bastard. You inspire loyalty in men twice your age. You see justice where others see only expediency." Jon shifts uncomfortably in his chair. These observations feel dangerous, like standing too close to a cliff's edge. Many bastards rise above their birth. Demon Blackfire was a bastard. So was Orys Baratheon. Indeed, and both were Dragon Lord's sons. Aemon sets the letter aside and leans forward, his ancient hands folded on the desk. "Tell me, what do you know of Lyanna Stark?" "My father's sister. She died during the rebellion. Robert Baratheon loved her." Jon pauses, seeing something in the Maester's expression that makes his pulse quicken. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think you know more than you realize. I think you have always known, somewhere in your heart, that the story of your birth is not what it seems." Aemon's voice drops to barely above a whisper. "I think you know whose son you truly are." The words hang in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Jon feels the world shifting beneath his feet, all the certainties of his life crumbling like sand in a storm. He thinks of his father's face whenever Jon's mother was mentioned, the pain that would flash across Ned Stark's grey eyes. He thinks of the crypts of Winterfell, where his father would go to pray beside Lyanna's tomb, always alone, always grieving. "No," Jon says, but the word comes out weak and uncertain. That's impossible. She died giving birth to a stillborn child. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows what they were told, Aemon corrects gently. But what if the child did not die? What if he was spirited away to safety, hidden from those who would see him dead? What if a noble lord chose to claim that child as his own bastard, rather than reveal the truth that would doom an innocent boy? Jon's hands are shaking now. He grips the chair arm so tightly his knuckles turn white. You're suggesting that I am suggesting that you listen to what your brother has to tell you when he arrives. I am suggesting that you prepare yourself for the possibility that everything you have believed about your place in this world may be wrong. The old man rises from his chair with effort, his age showing in every movement. He moves to the window, where the last light of day is fading into purple twilight. I know something of being born to a name that carries both great honor and terrible danger. I know what it is to choose between the crown you could wear and the duty you have sworn to serve. What would you have me do? Jon asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Listen to your brother. Consider what he tells you carefully. And remember that a man's true worth is not determined by the name he was born with, but by the choices he makes. Aemon turns from the window, his blind eyes somehow finding Jon's once again. The Night's Watch has been my home for more than 60 years. It has given my life meaning and purpose when I might otherwise have spent my days plotting and scheming for a throne. But you are young yet, Jon Snow. Your choices are not yet made. Jon stands abruptly, suddenly unable to bear the weight of the old man's words. I took vows, sacred vows. I swore to live and die at my post, to take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. Those vows bind me until death. Unless released by royal command, Aemon says quietly. Kings have the power to break chains they did not forge, Jon. Even the chains we forge for ourselves. The words follow Jon as he flees the chamber, stumbling through the corridors of Castle Black like a man drunk on wine. He finds himself in the Godswood, standing before the nameless heart tree, whose red leaves seem to whisper secrets in the evening wind. Here, in the silence and shadow, he lets the truth wash over him like a tide. If what Aemon suggests is true, then everything changes. He is not Ned Stark's bastard, but Lyanna Stark's son. Not the product of dishonor, but of love and loss. Not a Snow, but he cannot even think the name. It seems too large, too dangerous, too impossible to be real. But even as his mind rejects it, his heart recognizes the truth. It explains so much, his father's pain, his mother's absence from the story, the way Catelyn Stark had looked at him with such hatred and fear. She had not been jealous of a husband's infidelity. She had been terrified of what would happen if anyone discovered who he really was. The snow begins to fall as he stands there. Fat flakes that cling to his black cloak and dust his dark hair with white. Winter is coming to the wall, and with it, a brother who carries secrets that could shake the very foundations of the 7 kingdoms. Jon Snow closes his grey eyes and tries to imagine a world where he is not who he has always believed himself to be. The possibility both terrifies and exhilarates him in equal measure. In the distance, a wolf howls, its voice echoing off the ice and stone of the Great Wall. The sound seems to carry a message, though Jon cannot say what it might be. Perhaps it is simply the call of the wild, reminding him that some truths cannot be caged, no matter how high the walls that try to contain them. Lord Walder Frey sits in his great chair like a spider in its web, his roomy eyes fixed on the empty courtyard, where a king's army should be making camp. At 91 years old, he has seen kings rise and fall, wars won and lost, but he has never been so thoroughly humiliated as he is this grey morning. The wedding feast sits growing cold in his great hall. The bride waits in her chambers, and the king in the north is nowhere to be found. "Gone, my lord," reports Sir Jared Frey, one of his many sons. The man's face is flushed with embarrassment and rage. The scouts confirm it. Robb Stark turned his host north 3 days ago, abandoning the road to the twins entirely. He never had any intention of coming. The old lord's hands grip the arms of his chair with surprising strength for a man his age. His fingers are gnarled with arthritis, but his grip is still firm enough to strangle a man if he could reach one. The insult burns in his chest like poison, spreading through his ancient veins until every part of him aches with fury. "North," he rasps, his voice like wind through dry leaves. The whelp rides north while his uncle waits to be wed, while we prepare a feast in his honor. He cannot finish the sentence, too consumed with rage to speak coherently. This is the second time a Stark has broken faith with House Frey. The first was when the young wolf married that Westerling girl instead of one of Walder's daughters or granddaughters. That slight had cost the Starks 4,000 swords and the loyalty of the most strategically placed house in the Riverlands. Now the boy compounds his dishonor by abandoning his uncle's wedding entirely. "What of Lord Edmure?" asks another son, Sir Hostin, a thick man with the typical Frey features, small eyes, weak chin, thinning hair. "Shall we proceed with the ceremony regardless?" Walder waves a dismissive hand. "Let him wed Roslin if he wishes, but there will be no great feast, no celebration. The groom comes to us without the protection of his king, without the strength of the North behind him. He is nothing now but a lordling with a handful of guards. The truth of it settles over the gathered Freys like a shroud. Without Robb Stark's army to guarantee the alliance, Edmure Tully is merely another river lord seeking their favor. The marriage still has some value. The Tullys control Riverrun and command the loyalty of many smaller houses, but it is a pale shadow of what it could have been with the king in the North's support. This changes our arrangements with Lord Tywin, observes Sir Stevron, the eldest of Walder's sons and his heir. The man is past 60 himself, grey-bearded and cautious by nature. "The Lannisters offered us much for our betrayal of the Starks, but if the young wolf has already abandoned us—" "He has not abandoned us," Walder snarls. "We abandoned him when he broke his oath the first time. Everything that follows is merely consequence." His eyes grow crafty, the look of a man who has spent 9 decades learning how to turn every setback into advantage. "Send a raven to Lord Tywin immediately. Tell him that the northern army has turned away from the twins, leaving their southern flank exposed. Tell him that the young wolf appears to be in full retreat." "Is that wise?" Stevron asks carefully. "If Robb Stark discovers our correspondence with the Lannisters, what will he do? Attack the twins?" Walder laughs, a sound like bones rattling in a box. "Let him try. This is one of the most formidable strongholds in the 7 kingdoms. We have provisions for a year and enough men to hold these walls against any force. The boy king may have his dire wolf and his northern fury, but fury breaks against stone like waves against a cliff. The truth is that Walder has been corresponding with Tywin Lannister for weeks, ever since the defeat at Oxcross convinced him that the young wolf's cause was doomed. The Lord of Casterly Rock has promised much in exchange for Frey cooperation: gold, lands, marriages that would elevate House Frey to new heights of power and prestige. All Walder had to do was wait for the right moment to spring his trap. That moment was supposed to be today, at the wedding feast, when Robb Stark and his commanders would be drunk on wine and distracted by celebration. The plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Signal the musicians to play The Rains of Castamere, then watch as crossbow bolts found their targets. The Red Wedding, Tywin had called it in his letters. A feast of blood that would end the Northern Rebellion once and for all. But now the young wolf has slipped the snare without even knowing it existed. He has ridden north on some mysterious errand, leaving his southern allies exposed, and his enemies free to act without fear of reprisal. It is almost as if he knew what waited for him at the Twins, though Walder knows that is impossible. The secret has been kept among a bare handful of conspirators. Mayhaps this is better, he muses aloud. The boy was becoming too dangerous, too unpredictable. This way, we can deal with the remaining river lords without worrying about northern intervention. Edmure Tully is weak, easily manipulated. With him as our prisoner, our guest, we can control River Run and all who serve it. And then? Asks Hostine. Then we wait. Winter is coming, and armies cannot march in snow. The young wolf will hole up somewhere in the north, probably Winterfell if it still stands, and we will have months to consolidate our position. Come spring, Lord Tywin will march north with fresh armies, while we hold the crossing against any relief force. The rebellion will end not with a great battle, but with slow strangulation. The assembled Freys nod their approval. They are not a house known for honor or heroic stands. They are survivors, opportunists who have learned to read the changing winds and adjust their sails accordingly. If the Starks are falling, then House Frey will help push them over the edge and claim whatever rewards the winners offer. Send another raven, Walder commands, to Lord Bolton at Harrenhal. Tell him that his king has abandoned the Riverlands to their fate. See if his loyalty proves more flexible than it has appeared thus far. Roose Bolton is another who has been sounding less than fully committed to the Stark cause in recent letters. The Lord of the Dreadfort is a careful man, one who understands the value of keeping one's options open. With the right pressure, the right incentives, he might be convinced to change sides as well. What of the northern lords who remain with the young wolf? Stevron asks. Surely they will not all abandon him simply because he has turned north. Northern lords are loyal to a fault, Walder admits grudgingly. It is their strength and their weakness. They will follow their boy king into the depths of winter if he asks it of them. But loyalty cannot feed an army or keep men warm when the snows come. The north is vast but poor. They cannot sustain a war effort through a long winter. He rises from his chair with effort, his ancient joints protesting every movement. At 91, he should be dead by all rights, but spite has kept him alive longer than any man has a right to expect. He will live long enough to see the Starks humbled and House Frey elevated to its proper place among the great houses of Westeros. The wedding will proceed, he announces, but quietly, without fanfare. Let Edmure Tully think he has gained a powerful ally, while we decide exactly how useful he can be to us. Meanwhile, we accelerate our arrangements with Lord Tywin. The young wolf has given us an opportunity by abandoning his responsibilities. We would be fools not to take advantage of it. The great hall empties as his sons and grandsons hurry to carry out his orders. Ravens will fly before the sun sets, carrying word of the northern army's movements to King's Landing and Harrenhal. The web that Walder Frey has spent months weaving will finally close, though not quite in the way he had originally planned. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the shutters and sending leaves scurrying across the courtyard like frightened mice. Winter is indeed coming, and with it, a reckoning that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms. The only question is who will be left standing when the snows finally melt. Walder Frey settles back into his chair and smiles. It is not a pleasant expression on his ancient face. After 91 years of being overlooked and dismissed by greater lords, he is finally in a position to determine the fate of kings. The late Lord Frey, they call him, for his habit of arriving at battles just after they are decided. But this time, he will not be late. This time, he will help decide who wins and who loses. The Starks broke their word. Now they will reap the whirlwind. The horns of Castle Black sound 3 long blasts as the northern host crests the hill above the ancient fortress. Jon Snow stands atop the wall, his dark hair whipping in the cold wind, watching 3,000 men spread across the snow-covered ground below. Even at this distance, he can see the dire wolf banners of House Stark flying beside the crown of the king in the north. After 2 years of separation, his brother has come to the wall. But the army that makes camp beneath the towering ice is a shadow of what once marched south from Winterfell. Jon remembers the day Robb left, young and proud and full of righteous fury, leading 20,000 Northmen to war. Now barely 3,000 remain, their banners torn by wind and battle, their ranks thinned by death and defeat. The sight fills Jon with both joy and sorrow, joy at seeing his brother alive, sorrow at the price he has paid. "Impressive, isn't it?" says Lord Commander Mormont, joining Jon on the wall. The old bear's black cloak snaps in the wind as he surveys the army below. "I've never seen so many men this far north. What do you think the king in the north wants with us?" Jon cannot answer, his throat tight with emotion he dare not show. 3 days have passed since Maester Aemon revealed the possibility that everything Jon believes about his birth might be wrong. 3 days of wrestling with questions that have no easy answers, of wondering if the brother riding toward him might be something else entirely. A cousin, a king, a man who holds Jon's fate in his hands. The winch cage carries Jon down from the wall, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird. By the time he reaches the courtyard, Robb is already dismounting from his destrier, auburn hair gleaming in the pale afternoon light. At 16, he has grown tall and lean, with the long face and grey eyes of the Starks. But there is something different about him now, a weight in his bearing that speaks of crown and command. Their eyes meet across the yard, and for a moment neither moves. Then Robb breaks into a grin, the same smile Jon remembers from their boyhood at Winterfell, and strides forward with arms outstretched. "Jon," he says simply, and the name carries years of brotherhood in its single syllable. They embrace in the center of the courtyard, 2 young men who have been aged beyond their years by war and responsibility. Jon feels his brother's strength, the solid reality of him after so many months of worry and fear. Robb is alive, whole, here. Nothing else matters in this moment. "You look well," Robb says, stepping back to study Jon's face. "The wall agrees with you." "As much as any place can," Jon replies. "You look—" He pauses, searching for words. Tired, he thinks. Older. Sadder. "You look like a king." Robb's smile falters slightly. "Do I? Sometimes I wonder if I look more like a boy playing at being king." His grey eyes grow serious. "We need to talk, Jon. There are things you need to know." Before Jon can respond, Catelyn Stark approaches, her blue cloak bright against the grey stones of Castle Black. Jon stiffens instinctively. Old habits die hard. But there is something different in her expression. Not the cold hostility he remembers, but something closer to regret, uncertainty. "Jon," she says, and even her voice is different, softer somehow. "You have grown." "My lady," Jon replies carefully, uncertain how to respond to this change in her demeanor. You honor us with your presence at the wall." She studies his face with an intensity that makes him uncomfortable, her blue Tully eyes searching for something he cannot name. Indeed, there is much we must discuss. Lord Commander Mormont joins them, his weathered face creased with curiosity. "Your Grace," he says to Robb, "Castle Black is honored by your visit, though I confess we are puzzled by its purpose. Urgent business, your letter said?" "Urgent indeed," Robb agrees, "but private. I would speak with my brother alone, if you will permit it." "Of course. Jon is free to go where he will within the castle." The old bear's eyes narrow slightly. "Though I trust you remember that he is sworn to the Night's Watch now. His vows bind him to this place." "I remember," Robb says quietly. "But circumstances have changed. Things have come to light that complicate matters." An hour later, they gather in the Lord Commander's private chambers, Jon, Robb, and Catelyn. The room is warm and close after the bitter cold of the yard, lit by a fire that casts dancing shadows on the stone walls. Jon sits across from his brother, acutely aware of the distance between them that has nothing to do with physical space. They are no longer simply brothers sharing secrets in the godswood of Winterfell. One wears a crown, the other a black cloak. Everything has changed. "Tell me about father," Robb says suddenly. "Tell me what he said about your mother when he brought you north." The question catches Jon off guard. "Nothing. He never spoke of her. You know that." "Never? Not even when you asked?" "Especially not when I asked." Jon's voice grows tight. He would get this look in his eyes, like he was remembering something painful, and he would tell me that some things were best left buried. Robb and Catelyn exchange a glance, and Jon sees something pass between them. Knowledge, understanding, shared burden. His stomach begins to knot with dread. "What is this about?" Jon demands. "Why have you marched 3,000 men to the wall to ask about my mother? What has changed?" Instead of answering, Robb reaches into his doublet and withdraws a piece of parchment, yellowed with age. "This came to me 3 days ago, hidden in Winterfell's archives for 16 years. It's from Lyanna Stark, our father's sister, written before she died." Jon's breath catches. Lyanna Stark, the aunt he never knew, the woman whose memory haunted their father's dreams. Why would she write about him? "Read it," Robb says, holding out the letter. "Read it and understand why I had to come." Jon takes the parchment with trembling hands. The writing is delicate, feminine, urgent. As he reads, the world seems to tilt beneath him, like a ship in a storm. The words dance before his eyes, each one a hammer blow against everything he has ever believed about himself. "The son I bore is not what men believe. Wed in secret before the eyes of the Seven. Our son legitimate, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. His name is Aegon." The letter falls from Jon's nerveless fingers, drifting to the floor like a dead leaf. He stares at it, unable to speak, unable to breathe, unable to think beyond the impossible truth it contains. "No," he whispers finally. It can't be true." "I thought the same thing," Robb says gently. "But it is true, Jon. You are not my father's bastard. You are Lyanna's son, Prince Rhaegar's son, the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms." The words hit Jon like physical blows. Prince, Rhaegar, king, each one more impossible than the last. He is Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, sworn brother of the Night's Watch. He is not. He cannot be. "Aegon," Catelyn says quietly. "That is your true name. Aegon Targaryen, 3rd of his name." Jon looks up at her, seeing his own shock reflected in her blue eyes. You knew? I suspected, she admits. There were always things that didn't add up. Ned's pain whenever your mother was mentioned. The way he protected you, raised you alongside his true-born children, despite what it cost our marriage. I hoped I was wrong. But now you know why I had to come, Robb says. Why I abandoned my uncle's wedding, turned my back on crucial alliances, marched my army through the beginning of winter. You are the rightful king, Jon. Not me. You. Jon stands abruptly, the chair scraping against stone. He paces to the window, staring out at the wall that has defined his life for the past year. 700 feet of ice and stone, ancient and eternal, the edge of the world he knows. Beyond it lies the true north, the land of always winter, the realm of legends and nightmares. It seems somehow fitting that he should learn of his supposed destiny while looking into that endless white. The Night's Watch, he says without turning around. I swore vows, sacred vows that bind me until death. Kings have the power to release men from their vows, Robb says quietly. Even sworn brothers of the Night's Watch, when the need is great enough. And you think the need is great enough now? I think the realm needs its rightful king. I think 16 years of pretense is long enough. Robb's voice grows stronger, more certain. I think it's time for the dragon to wake from its long sleep. Jon turns from the window, his grey eyes meeting his brother's. In them, he sees love and loyalty and absolute conviction. Robb truly believes what he is saying. The letter, the revelation, the impossible truth. Robb believes it all. What if I refuse? Jon asks. What if I choose to honor my vows and remain at the wall? Then I will return south and face whatever consequences await, Robb replies without hesitation. But I willn't ask you to choose blindly. I will not force this upon you. The decision must be yours, freely made. Jon looks down at the letter lying on the floor, at the delicate script that speaks of love and loss and terrible secrets. Somewhere in those faded words lies the truth of his birth, the answer to questions that have plagued him all his life. But truth, he is learning, can be more terrible than any lie. I need time, he says finally. Time to think, to understand what this means. Of course, Robb says. But know this, Jon. Whatever you decide, you are my brother. That will never change. Blood makes you related, but love makes you family. And you will always be family. Outside, the wind begins to howl, rattling the shutters and sending snow swirling past the windows. Winter has come to the wall with a vengeance, and with it, choices that will reshape the 7 kingdoms. The bastard of Winterfell stands at the crossroads of destiny, and all the realm waits to see which path he will choose. The Sept of Castle Black has not seen a ceremony like this in living memory. Built of rough-hewn stone and timber, salvaged from the haunted forest, it is a humble place compared to the great septs of the south. But today it serves as the setting for something unprecedented. The release of a sworn brother from his vows by royal command. Jon Snow stands before the simple altar, still clad in the black wool of the Night's Watch. The 7-pointed star carved into the wall above him seems to watch with judgment as he prepares to break oaths he swore less than 2 years ago. His dark hair catches the light from the candles that line the walls, and his grey eyes reflect the flames like distant stars. At 16, he looks older than his years, worn by duty and the weight of impossible choices. Robb Stark stands to his right, wearing the bronze and iron crown of the king in the north. The simple circlet sits heavily on his auburn head, but he bears its weight with the dignity of one born to rule. In his hands, he holds a rolled parchment bearing the royal seal, the formal decree that will shatter the chains of Jon's vows and set him free to claim a different destiny. Maester Aemon completes the triangle, his ancient frame supported by a gnarled walking sticker. At 101 years old, the blind Maester has outlived kings and kingdoms, but his mind remains sharp as a blade. His milky eyes see nothing of the ceremony before him, yet he perceives more than either of the young men who stand with him. He understands the weight of this moment in ways that only one who has faced the same choice can truly comprehend. "We are gathered in the sight of gods and men," Robb begins, his voice echoing off the stone walls, to witness the release of Jon Snow from his vows to the Night's Watch. Let it be known that this action is taken not lightly, but from necessity, born of truth long hidden. The words carry formal weight, but Jon hears the tremor beneath them. His brother is nervous, uncertain whether he is doing the right thing. The crown may sit on Robb's head, but the boy who shared secrets in Winterfell's Godswood still lives beneath the royal trappings. "Jon Snow," Robb continues, reading from the parchment, "you swore before gods and men to take no wife, hold no lands, father no children, and live and die at your post. These vows were sworn in good faith, with full knowledge of their binding nature. But circumstances have arisen that supersede even the most sacred oaths." Jon closes his eyes, remembering the day he spoke those words. He had been so young, so certain that the wall would give his life meaning and purpose. The Night's Watch would be his brotherhood, his family, his destiny. Now that certainty crumbles like ice in spring sun. "By right of blood and royal authority," Robb declares, "I, Robb Stark, King in the North, do hereby grant you full and complete release from your vows to the Night's Watch. You are free to take a wife, hold lands, father children, and choose your own path in this world. The gods have witnessed your faithful service, and now they witness your release." The formal words hang in the air like incense smoke. Jon feels their power settling around him, breaking invisible chains that have bound him since the day he climbed the wall and chose black over all other colors. He is no longer a sworn brother. He is no longer Jon Snow of the Night's Watch. But if not that, then what? "Approach, Jon Snow," Maester Aemon says, his thin voice carrying unexpected strength. "Let us complete what has been begun." Jon steps forward until he stands directly before the ancient Maester. This close, he can see the network of lines that map a century of life across Aemon's face. The old man reaches out with trembling hands, finding the black cloak that hangs from Jon's shoulders. "I have served the Night's Watch for 60 years, Aemon says, as his fingers work at the cloak's clasp. 60 years since I chose duty over birthright, service over crown. I have never regretted that choice, for it gave my life purpose and meaning. But I understand that not all men are called to the same path." The cloak falls away, pooling at Jon's feet like spilled ink. Without it, Jon feels strangely light, as if he might float away on the next gust of wind. The black wool that has defined him for months lies discarded, and he cannot decide if he feels liberated or lost. "When I was young," Aemon continues, his blind eyes focused on something beyond the physical world, "I was offered a crown. The Great Council of 233 chose my younger brother Aegon instead. But there were those who said the throne should be mine by right of birth. I could have pressed my claim, gathered supporters, plunged the realm into civil war. Instead, I chose the Maester's chain, and later, the black cloak of the Night's Watch." Jon listens with growing understanding. He has always known that Maester Aemon was learned and wise, but this is the first time the old man has spoken so openly about his past, about the choices that brought him to the wall. "I chose duty over ambition, service over power," Aemon says. "It was the right choice for me in that time and place. But you, Jon Snow, face a different choice in a different time. The realm needs healing, and sometimes healing requires kings who understand the price of leadership." "How do I know if I'm making the right choice?" Jon asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "How can I be certain that I'm meant for this?" Aemon smiles, the expression transforming his ancient face. "You cannot be certain. That is the nature of great choices. They must be made without guarantee of success. But I will tell you this. A man who questions whether he is worthy to rule is far more likely to rule well than one who never doubts his own righteousness." Robb steps forward, removing the bronze and iron crown from his own head. In the candlelight, the simple circlet seems to glow with inner fire, though Jon knows it is only polished metal reflecting flame. Still, the sight of it makes his breath catch. This is the crown his brother has worn through 2 years of war, the symbol of northern independence and stark authority. "This has been my burden and my honor," Robb says, holding the crown out toward Jon. "But it was always meant to be temporary, a placeholder until the rightful king could claim what is his by blood and birth." "I'm not ready," Jon protests. "I know nothing of ruling kingdoms, of commanding armies, of the Game of Thrones. I'm just a bastard from Winterfell who learned to swing a sword." "You are Aegon Targaryen, third of his name," Robb says firmly. "Son of Prince Rhaegar and Lady Lyanna, heir to the Iron Throne and all the 7 kingdoms. But more than that, you are my brother, raised by the most honorable man who ever lived, taught to value justice over expedience and duty over desire. If that does not prepare a man to rule wisely, then nothing can." Jon looks from the crown in Robb's hands to the discarded black cloak at his feet. 2 paths stretch before him, each leading to a different destiny. The cloak represents safety, simplicity, the comfortable burden of obeying orders rather than giving them. The crown represents responsibility, danger, the terrible weight of holding millions of lives in his hands. But there is a third element in this equation, one that tips the balance in ways both practical and profound. Robb is willing to give up his own crown, to kneel before a bastard brother and acknowledge him as king. That gesture of love and loyalty cannot be ignored or refused. Family comes before all else. It is the lesson their father taught them, the truth that has guided every choice Robb has made in this war. "If I do this," Jon says slowly, "if I take the crown and the name, what happens to you? What happens to the North?" "The North becomes part of a united realm again," Robb answers without hesitation. "And I become what I should have been from the beginning, your loyal subject and devoted brother. The Starks have served kings for thousands of years. We can do so again, with honor and pride." Jon reaches out and takes the crown from Robb's hands. The metal is heavier than he expected, warm from his brother's touch. He turns it over in his palms, studying the bronze worked into the shape of leaves and the iron points that represent the northern kingdoms. It is not the elaborate gold work of the south, but something simpler and more honest. "Are you certain of this?" he asks one final time. "Once done, it cannot be undone. The realm will know that Aegon Targaryen lives. Our enemies will come for us with fire and sword." "They come for us anyway," Robb replies. "At least this way, we face them as we truly are, rather than as pretenders and rebels. Let them come. Dragons do not fear wolves or lions or roses." Maester Aemon steps forward, his blind hands finding Jon's face with surprising accuracy. The old man's touch is gentle but firm, the blessing of age and wisdom passed to youth and uncertainty. "You are no longer Jon Snow," he says, his voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "You are Aegon Targaryen, and the realm awaits your return. Rule with justice, lead with compassion, and remember that the greatest kings are those who serve their people rather than demanding to be served." Jon nods, feeling the truth of the words settle into his bones. He places the crown on his head, and the world shifts around him, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. He is no longer the bastard of Winterfell or the sworn brother of Castle Black. He is a king with all the terrible responsibility that entails. Outside the sept, snow begins to fall again, fat flakes drifting past the narrow windows like tears from a grey sky. Winter has come to the wall with a vengeance, but within these humble stone walls, something new is being born. The dragon stirs in the frozen north, and the Seven Kingdoms will never be the same. The Great Hall of Castle Black has been transformed for an occasion it was never meant to host. Banners hang from the rough stone walls, the direwolf of Stark, the trout of Tully, and for the first time in 16 years, the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. Candles burn in every alcove and windowsill, their light dancing off the ancient stones and casting long shadows across the assembled crowd. 3,000 Northmen have gathered to witness something unprecedented, the crowning of a Targaryen king in the shadow of the wall. Jon stands at the center of it all, no longer wearing the black wool of the Night's Watch, but garbed in simple grey and white, the colours of House Stark that raised him, though soon he will claim different heraldry entirely. At 16, he looks every inch the young king, tall and lean with the dark hair and grey eyes that mark him as Ned Stark's son in all but blood. Yet there is something different about him now, a gravity that speaks of destiny accepted and burdens willingly shouldered. Robb Stark kneels before him, the bronze and iron crown of the king in the north resting on a velvet cushion at his feet. The sight of his brother on bended knee fills Jon with equal measures of pride and sorrow. Robb has given up everything. Crown, kingdom, the independence he fought so hard to win, all for the sake of family and the truth that has finally come to light. "Before gods and men," Robb declares, his voice carrying clearly through the hall, "I, Robb Stark, king in the north and of the Trident, do hereby renounce my crown and pledge my fealty to the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Let all present bear witness. The north remembers, and we remember our true loyalty lies with the Iron Throne and its lawful heir." A murmur runs through the assembled Northmen. Some look confused. They have followed Robb through 2 years of war, died for northern independence, bled for the right to rule themselves. Now their king kneels before a bastard they barely know and speaks of the Iron Throne as if it were a prize to be sought rather than a yoke to be thrown off. But others understand. The older lords, the ones who remember the last Targaryen king and the rebellion that brought him down, see the political wisdom in what Robb offers. A legitimate Targaryen claimant changes everything. Instead of being rebels fighting against the rightful order, they become loyalists, supporting the true king against usurpers and pretenders. Catelyn Stark stands to one side, her blue eyes bright with tears she will not shed. The woman who once hated Jon Snow, who saw him as living proof of her husband's infidelity, now watches as he prepares to claim the highest throne in Westeros. The irony is not lost on her. For 16 years she wished him gone from Winterfell, and now she prays he will have the strength to rule wisely. Maester Aemon approaches with slow, measured steps, his ancient frame supported by his walking stick, but his mind sharp as Valyrian steel. In his free hand, he carries something that makes Jon's breath catch, a crown of black iron and rubies, ancient beyond measure and heavy with the weight of history. It is not the simple circlet that Robb wore, but something far grander and more terrible. "Where did you find that?" Jon whispers, staring at the crown with something approaching awe. "It has been in the vaults of Castle Black for near 100 years, Aemon replies, his blind eyes somehow finding Jon's face across the space between them. "Brought here when my brother Aerys was crowned, as a symbol of Targaryen commitment to defending the realm from the threats beyond the wall. I thought it lost, but the stewards found it among the old treasures when they learned what ceremony we would hold today. The old man lifts the crown higher, letting the rubies catch the light. Each stone is the size of a child's fist, and they seem to glow with inner fire in the candlelight. This is not merely a symbol of office, but a piece of living history, worn by Aegon the Conqueror himself, and passed down through 3 centuries of dragon kings. Kneel Aegon Targaryen, Aemon commands, and there is something in his voice that transforms the humble Maester into the prince he once was. Kneel and receive the crown of your ancestors." Jon sinks to one knee before the ancient man, feeling the weight of destiny settling around him like a cloak. The assembled crowd falls silent, even the wind outside seeming to hold its breath for this moment. Here, in this humble hall at the edge of the world, history pivots on its axis. "I have lived for 101 years, Aemon begins, his voice carrying despite its age, "and I have seen kings rise and fall, dynasties born and buried. I have watched the realm tear itself apart in pursuit of power, and I have seen good men die for the ambitions of the cruel and small. Today, I hope to see something different, a king who understands that the crown is not a prize to be won, but a burden to be borne." He places the crown on Jon's dark head, the ancient metal settling with surprising comfort despite its weight. The rubies catch the light and throw red fire across the walls as if dragons were flying through the hall once more. "Rise, Aegon Targaryen, 3rd of his name," Aemon proclaims, his voice stronger now than it has been in years. "Rise, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms, and Protector of the realm. Rise, my king, and accept the fealty of your subjects." Jon stands slowly, the crown heavy on his brow, but his shoulders straight and strong. The transformation is complete now. He is no longer Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, but Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The knowledge settles into his bones like warmth from a fire, giving him strength he did not know he possessed. Robb is the first to kneel, his auburn head bowed in submission to the brother he has loved since childhood. "Your Grace," he says, the words carrying no hint of resentment or regret. "I pledge my sword, my life, and my honor to you. The North is yours to command." One by one, the northern lords follow his example. They kneel in waves across the hall, Mormonts and Umbers, Karstarks and Glovers, all the proud houses that have served the Starks for thousands of years. Some kneel readily, understanding the political necessity of what unfolds before them. Others kneel reluctantly, confused by this sudden change in their fortunes. But all kneel because their king has knelt, and in the North, loyalty runs deeper than personal ambition. Catelyn approaches last, her steps measured and dignified. When she reaches Jon, she sinks into a perfect curtsy, her blue skirts pooling around her like water. "Your Grace," she says, and for the first time in 16 years, there is no coldness in her voice when she addresses him. "I ask your forgiveness for the years of resentment I bore you, and I pledge my service to your crown." Jon reaches down and takes her hands, raising her to her feet with gentle care. "There is nothing to forgive, my lady. You protected your family as you thought best, and I understand that now. Rise as my counselor and friend, if you will have it so." Tears do fall then, tracking silver paths down her cheeks. The bastard she scorned offers her friendship and forgiveness, and the generosity of it breaks something hard and bitter that has lived in her heart for too long. As the ceremony concludes, and the assembled lords begin to disperse, Maester Aemon approaches Jon once more. The old man's blind eyes are bright with unshed tears, and there is something in his expression that speaks of long-held secrets finally revealed. "There is one more thing you should know," he says quietly, his voice meant for Jon's ears alone. "One more truth that should be spoken now that you wear the crown of our house." "Our house?" Jon repeats, confusion clear in his grey eyes. Aemon smiles, the expression transforming his ancient face. "I am Aemon Targaryen, son of King Maekar, brother to King Aegon the Unlikely. If Lyanna's letter speaks true, if you are indeed the son of Prince Rhaegar, then you are my great-great-nephew. You are the last of our bloodline, and I am your family." The revelation hits Jon like a physical blow. This wise old man who has counseled him through the darkest moment of his life is not merely a master who chose duty over crown. He is blood, the last link to a family Jon never knew he had. "Uncle," Jon says, testing the word on his tongue. It feels strange but right, like a key turning in a lock he did not know existed. "Uncle," Aemon agrees, reaching out to touch Jon's face with trembling fingers. "The dragon's blood runs in both our veins, though we have chosen different paths to honor it. You wear the crown I refused, and you wear it well. Your parents would be proud." Outside, the wind picks up, howling around the towers of Castle Black like the voices of the ancient kings welcoming their heir home. The dragon stirs in the frozen north, and across the Seven Kingdoms, the Game of Thrones enters a new and unpredictable phase. King Aegon III looks out at his northern subjects, at the brother who gave up everything for love, at the woman who learned to see past old wounds, and at the ancient uncle who lived a century to see this moment. The burden of the crown weighs heavy on his head, but for the first time since this all began, Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, feels ready to bear it. The realm awaits its king, and winter is coming. But dragons, Jon has learned, are not easily conquered by cold. The raven arrives at King's Landing as the sun sets behind the Red Keep, its black wings cutting through the crimson sky like an omen of war. Tywin Lannister sits in the Tower of the Hand, surrounded by maps and letters that chronicle the slow collapse of northern resistance. At 57, the Lord of Casterly Rock remains a formidable presence, tall, broad-shouldered, with the golden hair of his house now turned silver at the temples. His green eyes, cold as winter ice, scan the parchment that has just shattered every calculation he has made about this war. The message is brief, written in the careful script of Walder Frey himself. Lord Tywin. The young wolf has abandoned the Riverlands entirely, marching north to the Wall. More troubling still, reports reach us that he has crowned another king, one claiming to be Aegon Targaryen, son of Prince Rhaegar. The northern lords have knelt. If this pretender has convinced them he is legitimate, our situation grows more complex. I await your orders. Tywin sets the letter down with deliberate care, his face revealing nothing of the cold fury building in his chest. Aegon Targaryen. The name strikes at the very foundations of his carefully constructed world. He has spent 16 years building Lannister power on the assumption that the Targaryen line died with the Mad King's children. Rhaegar's son was smashed against a wall by the mountain, and his daughter drowned in the Black Water. The dragons were extinct, leaving only lions to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Now a pretender rises in the north, claiming the name and blood that could legitimize rebellion across the realm. It matters little whether the boy is truly Rhaegar's son. What matters is that men believe he might be. Belief has toppled kingdoms and raised bastards to thrones. If this Aegon can convince enough lords of his legitimacy, the carefully balanced power structure that Tywin has spent years creating will crumble like sand. He rises from his chair and moves to the great window that looks out over the city. Below, King's Landing spreads in all directions like a vast tumor, teeming with life and corruption in equal measure. The people go about their evening business, unaware that their world teeters on the edge of another civil war. They have no idea that a dragon may have awakened in the frozen north, preparing to reclaim its birthright with fire and blood. The irony is not lost on him. For 2 years he has fought to crush the northern rebellion, led by a boy who called himself king in the north. That war was manageable, containable, a regional uprising that could be ground down through superior resources and strategic patience. But this changes everything. A Targaryen claimant transforms every battle from a conflict between rebels and crown into a war of succession. Suddenly, the Starks are not rebels, but loyalists supporting the rightful king against usurpers. Tywin has faced Targaryen pretenders before. During the War of the Ninepenny Kings, he helped put down Maelys Blackfyre, the last of the Black Dragon claimants. But that was different. Maelys was clearly illegitimate, a descendant of a legitimized bastard line that most lords rightfully rejected. This boy, if he is who he claims to be, would be the direct heir of the rightful Targaryen dynasty. The blood of Aegon the Conqueror would flow in his veins, and that blood has a power that goes beyond mere politics. "Maester Balabar," he calls, his voice cutting through the evening air like a blade. The aged maester appears within moments, quill and parchment already in hand. The man has served House Lannister long enough to recognize the signs of impending conflict. "Yes, my lord." "Send ravens immediately. To Lord Tyrell at Highgarden, Lord Baratheon at Storm's End, and Prince Doran in Sunspear. Tell them that a new pretender has emerged in the north, claiming to be Prince Rhaegar's son. Request their immediate thoughts on this development and their continued loyalty to the Iron Throne." The Maester scribbles quickly, his quill scratching across the parchment. And the message to Lord Frey. "Tell Lord Walder that his services become more valuable by the day. The wedding trap may have been avoided, but other opportunities will present themselves. A Targaryen pretender cannot be allowed to gather strength." Tywin pauses, considering his next words carefully. "Also, send word to Lord Bolton at Harrenhal. If he harbored any lingering loyalty to his former king, this development may cure him of such sentiments. A bastard calling himself king in the north is one thing. A supposed Targaryen heir is quite another." As the Maester hurries away to dispatch the ravens, Tywin returns to his desk, and the maps spread across its surface. The political landscape that seemed so clear this morning has become a maze of new dangers and opportunities. Every alliance must be reconsidered, every strategy re-evaluated in light of this development. The boy's timing is either brilliant or catastrophically poor, depending on one's perspective. Winter is coming in earnest now, making large-scale military campaigns increasingly difficult. An army marching north would face supply problems, harsh weather, and the natural defensive advantages that benefit whoever holds the high ground. But winter also makes it impossible for northern forces to march south until spring, giving the crown months to prepare and consolidate opposition. The question that gnaws at Tywin is simple but crucial. How many of the great houses will see opportunity in this new claimant? The Tyrells have grown fat and rich under Lannister rule, but they are ambitious and might be tempted by the possibility of backing a winner early. The Martells have never forgiven the Lannisters for what happened to Elia and her children during the sack of King's Landing. They might welcome a chance to support Rhaegar's surviving son against his parents' killers. Even more concerning is the possible reaction from across the Narrow Sea. Daenerys Targaryen still lives in exile, building strength in the slave cities of Slaver's Bay. She calls herself the rightful queen, but her claim becomes secondary if a legitimate male heir has survived. Would she come west to support this Aegon, or would she see him as a rival to be eliminated? Either possibility brings its own dangers. Tywin pulls out a fresh sheet of parchment and begins drafting a letter to his daughter. Cersei must be informed immediately. As Queen Regent, she needs to understand how this development affects the royal family's position. The letter is carefully worded, revealing nothing that could be used against them if intercepted, but making clear that decisive action may soon be necessary. "My dear daughter," he writes, "news has reached me of developments in the north that require our immediate attention. A new player has entered the game, claiming ancient rights and old names. I trust you will take appropriate measures to ensure the security of the realm and the safety of our family. The pieces are in motion, and we must be prepared to respond swiftly when the moment comes. The vagueness is intentional. Ravens can be shot down, letters intercepted, and information used by enemies to devastating effect. But Cersei will understand the implications. She has lived with the fear of Targaryen restoration for 16 years, knowing that her children's lives depend on the continued extinction of the dragon bloodline." As he seals the letter with his personal sigil, Tywin allows himself a moment of genuine concern. He has built his reputation on reading people, on understanding their motivations and predicting their actions. But this Aegon Targaryen remains an unknown quantity. If he is truly Rhaegar's son, he was raised by Eddard Stark, a man whose honor made him predictable but whose influence could not be underestimated. A Targaryen with Stark sensibilities might prove more dangerous than any pure-blooded dragon prince. The boy's decision to crown himself at Castle Black, rather than marching south, also reveals strategic thinking. The wall is the perfect defensive position, impossible to storm, easy to supply from the north, and invested with enough symbolic importance to legitimize his claim. From there, he can wait out the winter while building support, using the months of enforced peace to consolidate his position and plan his eventual southern campaign. Tywin has always believed that the key to victory lies in controlling the tempo of conflict, forcing enemies to react to his initiatives rather than the reverse. But this development threatens to flip that dynamic entirely. The Pretender King holds the strategic initiative now, and Tywin finds himself in the unfamiliar position of having to respond to someone else's moves. He leans back in his chair, staring at the maps with new eyes. Every castle, every river, every mountain pass must be reconsidered as a potential asset or liability in the coming conflict. The Game of Thrones has entered a new phase, and the stakes have never been higher. The question is not whether there will be war. There will be. The question is whether that war will end with a lion or a dragon on the Iron Throne. Outside, night falls over King's Landing like a shroud, and somewhere in the darkness, ravens carry word of dragons to every corner of the Seven Kingdoms. Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock and Hand of the King, begins preparing for the most dangerous challenge his house has ever faced. The dragon has awakened in the north, and winter is coming for them all. The war room at Castle Black has been transformed into the nerve center of a kingdom reborn. Maps cover every available surface, some showing the Seven Kingdoms in their entirety, others focusing on specific regions where battles will likely be fought in the months to come. Wooden markers carved with the sigils of the great houses stand like pieces on a vast game board, each representing thousands of men and the complex web of loyalties that bind them. Jon sits at the head of the great table, the crown of his ancestors resting heavy on his dark hair. Even after 3 days, he still feels strange in royal garb. The black and red of House Targaryen sits uncomfortably on shoulders more accustomed to the simple wool of the Night's Watch. At 16, he has the lean build and serious countenance of a young man forced to grow up too quickly, his grey eyes studying the maps with the intensity of someone who understands that every decision made in this room will cost lives. Robb stands across from him, no longer wearing a crown, but still commanding respect through force of personality and proven leadership. The auburn-haired former king in the north has adapted to his new role with surprising ease, throwing himself into the task of planning their campaign with the same passionate dedication he once brought to his own war. If he feels any resentment at giving up his crown, he shows no sign of it. The lords who declared for us number approximately 12,000 men, Robb says, moving wooden pieces across the map of the north. Not counting the forces that remain with us here at Castle Black, it's a respectable number, but not enough to march south and face the combined might of the crown. Jon nods, his finger tracing the borders between kingdoms. What of the other regions? Are there lords who might declare for a Targaryen restoration? Dawn is our best hope, Robb admits. Prince Doran has never forgotten what happened to his sister and her children during the sack of King's Landing. If anyone would welcome the return of Rhaegar's son, it would be the Dornish. But they're also cautious. They'll want proof of your legitimacy before they commit their spears. The conversation turns to practicalities, supply lines, march routes, potential allies and enemies. It is sobering work, breaking down the romantic notion of righteous conquest into the brutal mathematics of war. Every river crossing becomes a potential choke point, every castle a fortress that must be either bypassed or reduced through siege. The realm that Jon has claimed on paper must now be won with blood and steel. There's another matter we must discuss, Jon says eventually, his voice heavy with reluctance. Winterfell. The name hangs in the air between them like a ghost from their shared past. Winterfell, seat of House Stark for thousands of years, the castle where they were raised as brothers, the heart of the north that has been reduced to blackened stone and bitter memories. The reports from our scouts are not encouraging, Robb says carefully. The Ironborn held it for months before Bolton's bastard drove them out. What they couldn't take with them, they destroyed. The Great Hall is a ruin, the towers are burned, and the crypts. He pauses, unable to finish the sentence. The crypts where our father lies, Jon says quietly, where all the Stark kings sleep in stone and darkness. What happened there? Looted. Defiled. The Iron Men were looking for treasure, but they found only ancient bones and rusted swords. Still, they took what they could and smashed the rest. Robb's hands clench into fists on the table. When I think of what they did to our home, to the place where we learned to walk and fight and dream. Jon closes his eyes, remembering Winterfell as it was. The massive walls, the glass gardens where roses bloomed even in winter, the Godswood where he and Robb had shared so many secrets. That Winterfell exists now only in memory, destroyed by the very war that has brought them to this moment. It can be rebuilt, he says finally. Stone can be raised again, walls can be restored. The important thing is that House Stark endures. Does it? Robb asks, and there is genuine uncertainty in his voice. I'm no longer king in the north. You bear the Targaryen name now. Bran and Rickon are dead, Arya is missing, and Sansa is held captive in King's Landing. What's left of House Stark but ruins and memories? The question strikes at the heart of Jon's own doubts. He has accepted the crown and the name that comes with it, but part of him will always be the bastard of Winterfell, more comfortable in the shadows than in the light of thrones. The Targaryen blood in his veins may make him king, but it is Stark honor that guides his choices. You're left, he says firmly, and I'm left, whatever name I bear. The wolves may have scattered, but the pack survives. When this war is won, when the Iron Throne is secure, we'll return to the north together. We'll raise Winterfell's walls again, and we'll do it as brothers. Robb looks up from the maps, studying Jon's face with the intensity of someone trying to read truth in familiar features. You mean that? Even as king, even with all the 7 kingdoms to rule, you'd come back to the north? The north is part of the 7 kingdoms, Jon reminds him. And more than that, it's home. Kings need homes just as much as bastards do. They return to the maps, but the conversation has shifted the mood in subtle ways. They are no longer just planning a campaign of conquest, but discussing the future they hope to build when the fighting is done. It is a future that includes both dragons and wolves, both royal duties and family bonds. The timing will be crucial, Robb observes, moving pieces to represent the movement of armies across the continent. We can't march until spring. Winter campaigning would destroy us before we ever faced an enemy in battle. But that also means the crown will have months to prepare, to gather allies and strengthen their position. Let them prepare, Jon says, with more confidence than he feels. Time favors us as much as them. Every month that passes is another month for word of my survival to spread. Another month for lords to remember their oaths to the Targaryen dynasty. Fear may keep some in line, but loyalty born of hope is stronger than loyalty born of terror. It is a lesson learned from their father, who commanded devotion through honor rather than intimidation. Ned Stark's men followed him because they believed in him, not because they feared the consequences of disobedience. If Jon can inspire that same devotion on a larger scale, no army the crown assembles will be able to stand against him. What of our ravens? Jon asks. Have we sent word to potential allies? Carefully worded messages have gone out to 12 houses, Robb confirms. Nothing that could be used against us if intercepted, but enough to let them know that options exist for those with long memories and flexible loyalties. The responses have been mixed. Some houses have sent polite but non-committal replies, acknowledging the message without making any promises. Others have maintained pointed silence, which could mean either caution or outright hostility. A few have sent encouraging words, hidden behind layers of diplomatic language, suggesting they might be willing to consider supporting a Targaryen restoration under the right circumstances. We're asking them to take an enormous risk, Jon acknowledges. To bet their lives and lands on the word of a boy they've never met, claiming a name that has been dead for 16 years. I wouldn't blame any of them for hesitation. You're not just any boy claiming any name, Robb counters. You're Ned Stark's son in all the ways that matter, raised with northern values and northern honor. That counts for something, even in the south. And you're Rhaegar's son by blood, which makes you the rightful heir by every law of succession. That counts for even more. The strategic planning continues into the late hours of the night, covering everything from supply logistics to siege tactics, to the delicate art of keeping a coalition of proud lords working toward the same goal. It is exhausting work, made more difficult by the knowledge that every decision they make will ripple outward to affect thousands of lives. As the candles burn lower and the maps begin to blur with fatigue, Jon pushes back from the table and moves to the window that looks out over the wall. 700 feet below, he can see the cook fires of his army. 3,000 men who have followed their king into the frozen north and now wait to follow him south again when spring comes. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had been different? He asks without turning around. If I had never learned the truth, if you had gone to the twins as planned, if we had simply continued on the path we were walking? Robb joins him at the window, standing shoulder to shoulder, as they have so many times before. Every day, he admits, but wondering doesn't change anything. We are where we are because of the choices we made, and now we have to live with the consequences. No regrets? About giving up the crown? None. About abandoning the wedding and turning north instead of south? None. About declaring you the rightful king and kneeling before my brother? Robb pauses, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. None at all. The only thing I regret is that it took us so long to learn the truth. They stand in comfortable silence for a while, watching the northern lights dance across the sky like banners in the wind. Tomorrow will bring more planning, more preparations for the war that must come. But for now, they are simply brothers again, sharing the burden of leadership and the hope for a better future. Outside, winter holds the land in its grip, but spring will come eventually. And when it does, the dragon and the wolf will ride south together to reclaim their birthright and restore the realm to something resembling peace. The Game of Thrones is far from over, but for the first time since it began, the players include men who value honor above ambition and family above personal power. That may not guarantee victory, but it offers something that has been missing from Westeros for far too long: hope. Snow falls steadily outside the windows of Castle Black, fat flakes that drift down like ash from a funeral pyre. Winter has arrived in earnest now, blanketing the ancient fortress in white silence that seems to muffle even the sound of breathing. In the Lord Commander's solar, 3 figures sit around a dying fire, the weight of unspoken truths and difficult choices hanging heavy in the air between them. Jon stares into the flames, still uncomfortable in the royal garb he has worn for nearly a week now. The black and red of House Targaryen feels foreign against his skin, a constant reminder of how much his world has changed. At 16, his dark hair and grey eyes mark him as unmistakably Stark, despite the crown that rests on a nearby table, its rubies glowing like drops of blood in the firelight. The transformation from bastard to king sits uneasily on shoulders that remember the weight of a different burden, the black cloak of the Night's Watch that once defined his entire existence. Robb sits across from him, auburn hair catching the light as he turns a piece of parchment over and over in his hands. The letter arrived this morning from the twins, Lord Walder's response to their abandonment of the wedding feast. Its contents are predictable, but no less troubling for their inevitability. House Frey has formally declared for the Iron Throne, offering their strategic crossing to any army that marches north against the Pretender King. Sir Stevron writes that their gates are open to all who serve the rightful crown, Robb says, reading from the letter again, though he has memorized every poisonous word. 4,000 men will march under Frey banners when spring comes, and their bridge will be denied to any who support the northern cause. The crossing we needed to unite the Riverlands with the northern resistance, Jon observes quietly. Cut off, we'll have to find another route south, longer, more dangerous, through territory that may not welcome us. Or we could take the crossing by force, Robb suggests, though his tone suggests he knows the futility of such an attempt. Storm the twins, put Walder Frey to the sword, and claim what we need. At what cost? Catelyn speaks for the first time in an hour, her blue eyes reflecting the firelight like still water. The twins are one of the most formidable strongholds in the Seven Kingdoms. We could spend months in siege, bleeding our strength away while our enemies gather in the south. Is revenge worth destroying our cause? The question hangs unanswered, because they all know the truth. It was their choice to abandon the wedding, their decision to put family honor above political necessity. The consequences were always going to be severe, and now those consequences are manifesting in ways that could doom their entire campaign before it begins. I sometimes wonder if we made the right choice, Robb admits, setting the letter aside with obvious reluctance. Don't misunderstand. I believe Jon is the rightful king, and I would make the same decision again. But the cost? Every northern lord who will die because we couldn't cross the Green Fork, every family that will suffer because we chose truth over advantage. The choice was mine, Jon says firmly. You offered me the crown, but I chose to accept it. If there are consequences, I bear them. We all bear them, Catelyn corrects, and there is something different in her voice now. Not the cold hostility Jon remembers from childhood, but the warmth of genuine acceptance. This is a family decision, and we face the results as a family. The word hangs in the air like a benediction. Family. For 16 years, Jon has lived on the edges of that word, allowed to share in its benefits, but never fully welcomed into its warmth. Catelyn's acknowledgement of him as family represents a healing that seemed impossible just weeks ago. I owe you an apology, she continues, turning to face Jon directly. For 16 years, I saw you as a threat to my children, a reminder of what I thought was my husband's betrayal. I treated you with coldness when you deserved kindness, suspicion when you deserved trust. I cannot undo those years, but I can acknowledge the wrong I did you. Jon looks up from the fire, meeting her eyes for perhaps the first time without the old barriers between them. You were protecting your family. I understand that now. A mother's first duty is to her children. Father taught me that, even if I was never truly one of them. But you were, Catelyn insists. Ned raised you as his son in every way that mattered. You learned honor at his knee, courage in his halls, justice from his example. The blood in your veins may be Targaryen, but the man you've become is pure Stark. That makes you family, whatever name you choose to wear. The acknowledgement breaks something loose in Jon's chest, a knot of old hurt that has lived there so long he had forgotten it existed. To hear those words from the woman whose approval he had stopped hoping for years ago feels like absolution for sins he never committed. The irony is not lost on me, he says with a slight smile. I spent my whole life wishing you would accept me as part of the family. Now that you have, I discover I was never truly your husband's bastard to begin with. Perhaps that's what made it possible, Catelyn replies thoughtfully. Knowing the truth freed me to see clearly for the first time. You are not the symbol of betrayal I thought you were, but proof of the greatest sacrifice Ned ever made. He let the world believe him dishonorable, rather than see an innocent child murdered. Outside, the wind picks up, howling around the towers of Castle Black like the voices of the dead. The sound reminds them all of their precarious position, isolated at the edge of the world, surrounded by enemies, facing a campaign that grows more difficult with each passing day. Winter will be our greatest challenge, Robb observes, watching the snow swirl past the windows. Large armies cannot move in deep winter. Supply lines become impossible to maintain. Men freeze to death in their sleep, and horses die of cold before they ever see battle. We're talking about waiting months before we can march south. Months for the Crown to consolidate support, gather allies, prepare defenses, Jon adds. Every day we wait is another day for Tywin Lannister to strengthen his position. But also another day for word of your survival to spread, Catelyn points out. Another day for lords who remember their oaths to House Targaryen to consider their options. Fear may keep them in line for now, but loyalty born of hope can overcome fear given time. It is a delicate balance, the need for haste against the impossibility of winter campaigning, the desire for justice against the reality of political calculation. Every choice they make carries the weight of thousands of lives, and the margin for error grows smaller with each decision. What if we're wrong? Jon asks suddenly. What if I'm not the man the realm needs? What if the crown is just another burden I'm not strong enough to carry? The question reveals the fear that has been growing in him since the moment he accepted the crown. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of failing the people who have placed their trust in him. The bastard of Winterfell never had to worry about such things, but kings must carry the weight of entire kingdoms on their shoulders. Then we'll fail together, Robb says simply, and we'll fail as a family, standing by each other until the end. That's more than most kings can say. Your father never sought the crown, Catelyn adds. He would have been a good king precisely because he didn't want it, because he understood the cost of power. You have that same understanding, that same reluctance to rule for its own sake. That makes you more worthy than men who scheme their whole lives for a throne. The fire burns lower, casting longer shadows across the room. Soon they will have to add more wood or let it die entirely. But for now they sit in comfortable silence, three people who have found their way to an understanding that seemed impossible just weeks ago. When spring comes, Jon says eventually, when we march south to claim the Iron Throne, we do it together. Not as king and subjects, but as family. Whatever the cost, whatever the consequences, we face them as Starks. As family, Catelyn agrees, the word carrying the weight of 16 years of healing. As pack, Robb adds with a slight smile, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Outside, the snow continues to fall, covering the world in white silence. Winter has come to the wall with a vengeance, but within these stone walls, something warm has been kindled that no cold can extinguish. The price of truth has been high, allies lost, bridges burned, easy victories abandoned for harder but more honest paths. But in return, they have gained something more valuable than political advantage. They have gained each other, and in a world where trust is rarer than gold and honor is mocked as weakness, that may be the greatest treasure of all. The Game of Thrones demands many sacrifices, but it cannot take away the bonds forged in fire and sealed in blood. Whatever comes next, they will face it as family. The dragon may wear the crown, but the wolf lives in his heart, and that heart beats with the rhythm of pack loyalty, that no throne can change. In the end, that may be what saves the Seven Kingdoms, not the return of kings, but the return of family honor to the halls of power. Winter is here. Spring feels impossibly distant, and the realm waits to see what manner of king the bastard of Winterfell will prove to be. But tonight, in this moment, Jon Snow is exactly where he belongs, surrounded by family, accepted at last, ready to face whatever storms may come. Spring comes to Castle Black like a whispered promise, bringing with it the scent of new grass and the distant sound of ice cracking on the rivers far below. After months of winter's grip, the wall begins to weep great tears of melting ice, and the ground turns soft beneath the feet of 3,000 men preparing for the longest march of their lives. The northern host has waited through the dark months, growing stronger in spirit if not in number, bound together by loyalty to a king who was once a bastard and a cause that was once thought hopeless. Jon stands atop the wall one final time, looking south toward the kingdoms that await his claim. The crown of black iron and rubies sits heavy on his dark hair, but he has learned to bear its weight with the dignity of one born to rule. At 16, his transformation from Jon Snow to Aegon Targaryen is complete, not in appearance, for his grey eyes and long, stark face remain unchanged, but in purpose and understanding of what he must become. The bastard who once believed himself cursed to live in shadows now prepares to step into the light of history. Below him, the army spreads across the thawing ground like a living tapestry. 3,000 Northmen, their banners snapping in the spring wind, the direwolf of Stark flying beside the three-headed dragon of Targaryen for the first time in 16 years. These are hard men, veterans of 2 years of war, who have followed their young king through defeat and doubt to this moment of renewed hope. They understand that the road south leads to battle, and possibly death, but they march willingly because they believe in the man who leads them. Robb emerges from the winch cage, his auburn hair catching the morning light as he joins his brother on the wall. The former king in the north wears simple mail and leather now, no crown upon his brow, but his bearing still commands respect. He has given up everything for family, throne, kingdom, the independence he fought so hard to win, yet there is no trace of regret in his grey eyes, only the quiet satisfaction of a man who knows he has chosen the right path. "The men are ready," he reports, his breath misting in the cool air. Supplies loaded, weapons sharpened, hearts prepared for what comes next. They look to you now, Jon. Not as the bastard they remember, but as the king they need. Jon nods, still staring south at the vast expanse of the Seven Kingdoms. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies King's Landing and the Iron Throne that is his by right of birth. Between here and there stretch hundreds of miles of hostile territory, defended by armies that will not yield easily to his claim. The crown recognizes no authority higher than its own, and Tywin Lannister will use every resource at his disposal to prevent a Targaryen restoration. Are we doing the right thing? Jon asks, the question that has haunted him through the long winter months. Marching to war when we could have found peace? Claiming a throne when we could have built a different kind of kingdom in the north? You are the rightful king, Robb replies without hesitation. The blood of the dragon flows in your veins, and that blood carries with it duties that cannot be ignored. The realm suffers under false kings and usurpers. If we have the power to restore justice, how can we choose comfort over responsibility? It is the same argument that convinced Jon to accept the crown months ago, but it carries new weight now that the moment of decision has arrived. Peace is always easier than war, safety more appealing than sacrifice. Yet kings are not made to choose the easy path but the right one, however difficult it may prove. Father would have understood, Jon says, thinking of Ned Stark and the choice he made 16 years ago to protect an innocent child. He gave up his honor to save my life. Now we risk our lives to restore honor to the realm. They descend from the wall together, brothers in blood if not in name, united in purpose despite the different paths that brought them to this moment. The courtyard of Castle Black buzzes with activity as the final preparations are made for departure. Horses stamp and snort in the cool air, supply wagons creak under the weight of provisions, and men check their weapons one last time before the long march begins. Catelyn waits near the gates, wrapped in a travelling cloak of grey wool that marks her as a daughter of the North, despite her Tully heritage. She has chosen to ride with them, leaving behind the safety of the wall to share in whatever fate awaits. Her decision surprised no one. The woman who once saw Jon as a threat to her family now stands ready to die for the king he has become. "Your Grace," she says, as Jon approaches, the title still sounding strange from her lips, but spoken with genuine respect. "The rear guard is formed and ready. We can be away within the hour." "Then let us not delay longer than necessary," Jon replies. "Every day we wait is another day for our enemies to prepare." The order is given, and the great gates of Castle Black swing open for the last time. The northern host begins to move, a river of men and horses flowing south from the wall toward whatever destiny awaits. Jon rides at the head of the column, the dragon banner streaming behind him, while Robb takes position with the vanguard, and Catelyn oversees the baggage train. They are a family divided by duty, but united by love, facing the greatest challenge of their lives together. As they ride past the village of Molestown and into the wild lands beyond, Jon reflects on how far he has come from the bastard boy who once believed the wall would be his home forever. The Night's Watch had seemed like an ending then, a place where broken men and discarded sons could find purpose in service to something greater than themselves. Now he understands it was only a beginning, a forge where he was shaped into the man the realm needed him to become. The transformation has not been easy. Every choice has carried a price. Every step forward has meant leaving something behind. The boy who knelt before the heart tree and spoke vows to the Night's Watch died when the crown touched his head. In his place stands a king who must balance the competing demands of justice and mercy, honor and pragmatism, the needs of the many against the love of the few. Yet through it all, the lessons learned at Ned Stark's knee remain unchanged. Honor may be mocked by some as weakness, but it is the foundation upon which all good governance rests. Justice delayed may be justice denied, but justice corrupted by expedience becomes mere vengeance. The crown may command respect through fear, but the love of the people can only be earned through service to their needs. "What do you think Father would say if he could see us now?" Robb asks, riding up beside his brother as the column stretches out behind them like a steel serpent. "He would tell us to be careful," Jon replies with a slight smile. "To remember that the crown is not a prize to be won, but a burden to be borne. To rule with justice tempered by mercy, and to never forget that kings serve their people, not the reverse." And then he would probably worry about whether we remembered to pack enough warm clothing, Robb adds, earning a laugh from his brother. Even in the face of the monumental task ahead, they are still the boys who grew up together in Winterfell, sharing jokes and fears in equal measure. The miles pass beneath their horses' hooves as the day wears on, And gradually the wall falls behind them until it is no more than a white line on the northern horizon. Ahead lies the path to war, and whatever fate the gods have written for them. The northern lords have pledged their support. Ravens have carried word of the dragon's return to every corner of the realm, and soon all the 7 kingdoms will know that House Targaryen lives again. But that knowledge will come with a price. Tywin Lannister does not yield what he considers his by right, and the crown will fight to maintain its power with every resource at its disposal. The war to come will be longer and bloodier than anything they have yet experienced, a conflict that will reshape the realm regardless of who emerges victorious. As the sun begins to set behind them, painting the sky in shades of red and gold that echo the colors on Jon's banner, the northern host makes camp for the first night of what may be their final campaign. 3,000 men settle around cookfires under a canopy of stars, sharing stories and songs that carry them back to homes they may never see again. Jon stands apart from the camp, looking south toward the kingdoms that wait in darkness. Somewhere beyond his sight, the Iron Throne sits empty in the Red Keep, surrounded by men who call themselves kings, but rule through fear and force. Tomorrow will bring them closer to that distant throne, and each step forward will be paid for in blood and sacrifice. But tonight, for this one moment, he allows himself to feel the satisfaction of a choice well made. He has found his family, claimed his name, and accepted the burden that comes with royal blood. The bastard of Winterfell is gone forever, but in his place stands something greater, a king who understands that true strength comes not from the ability to take what you want, but from the wisdom to know what the realm needs. The dragon has awakened, and the 7 kingdoms will never be the same. Whether that change brings justice or merely more suffering remains to be seen, but the die has been cast, and the game begun anew. In the distance, a wolf howls, perhaps Grey Wind calling to his master, or perhaps just one of the wild wolves that roam these northern lands. Either way, the sound carries a message that every Northman understands. The pack survives, and winter is ending at last. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like,